Welcome to Social Justice University. My name is Dragonkin, and today we'll be doing episode 1, LGBT+, emphasis on the plus. By now, a lot of you have already heard that the LGBT community has used more and more acronyms where they go to a point where they just say plus. Well, today we're going to be going through all of the acronym letters to dissect and understand where these people are coming from and try and disprove parts of it and explain why they're including these groups as an all-encompassing movement. And before I get started on dissecting the acronym that I'm going to be looking at today, which is LGBTQIP2SAA, I'm going to go over some of my favorite acronyms. So like many acronyms have, they tried to create words to go along, like quote BAG, which was queer, questioning, intersexual, lesbian, transgender, two-spirited, bisexual, asexual, ally, gay, and genderqueer. You also had Fab Glitter, which is fetish, ally, polyamorous, bisexual, gay, lesbian, intersexual, transgender, transsexual, and gendering revolution, which is just an amazing word to begin with. But my favorite acronym had to be from Wesleyan University, which is, big breath for this one, LGBTQFAGPBDSM, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, transgender, queer, questioning, flexible, agender, genderfuck, polyamorous, bondage, discipline, dominant, submission, and sadism, masochism, which is just one amazing combination of everything wrong with the LGBT community. It starts with LGBT, which is fine, has QQ for them crying, it has fag right in the middle of it, and it ends with BDSM where they beat the shit out of each other. And while personally I have no prejudices against any of these groups or any of the people involved in them, but I have a huge issue with the ideologies and some of the things that are said in the movements that I find particularly wrong, and how they attack others and the politics that are pushed. So to really get into those, we have to go through the first layer to get further in on the movements and understanding. So we have to start by dissecting the different parts of the movement. So let's get into the acronym that I'm looking at, which is LGBTQIP2SAA. Now, the beginning of this, obviously, is the LGBT, the main core of the movement, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Already just with the main core four, we're getting into an issue that I'm going to be looking at in another video, which is gender versus sexuality, and how these two things aren't exactly the same thing, and how the fact that they're in the same movement is not the best place to talk about some of these issues, because many gay, lesbian, and bisexual people don't support transgender people, and there's things that transgender people don't necessarily support that bisexual people or maybe gay people or lesbians are more inclined to support. Now, the next letter in this acronym is queer, which is the most debated term in the LGBT community, because the word queer literally means odd, strange, weird. And this term is used as an all-encompassing term for the LGBT groups. This term can cover everything in the community. A lot of the academics will just call this queer theory or queer studies. However, there's people in the community that think that this word should not describe them because they are not odd, they are not different, they are themselves, they're trying to normalize their sexuality and identity. Many people in the LGBT community already use queer as their version of the N-word. They think that that is a word that only they can say, even though it is technically the academic term for LGBT. This creates a victim narrative from the start from their own group, using the academic term as the victimized word creates a victimized complex that we're already seeing within the universities, and we're starting to understand is causing many of the issues in our society today. The next part of the acronym is questioning, and questioning is pretty much understood as someone who is curious. You could say they're bi-curious or hetero-curious or homo-curious, things like that. Basically, anyone that is unsure if they're trans, if they're gay, if they're bisexual, and they're trying to experiment, they wanted to include into the group already and didn't want to make them feel outcasted. The next part of the acronym is intersex. And what intersex is people that were born with extra chromosomes or an extra set of genitalia. Now, this could mean that they were born male with a uterus. It could be that they were born female and they had a scrotal sac, things like that. There's been some genetic hiccups, and this is actually more common than you would think. We commonly think of people that are intersexual as hermaphrodites, people that were born as both genders, and this is a very convenient thing for the LGBT community to push because they go, well, if they can be born with both sets of genitalia as well, then that just proves that there is a gender spectrum and that there is a sex spectrum and all of these other things, when most of these people are one way and they will just transition from, like, if they're born mostly male, they'll get the uterus removed. If they're born mostly female and they have like a unusable penis, they'll get that removed and just go throughout life being a male or a female in most cases. Now, the next part of the acronym is P for pansexual, and while the anti-SJW crowds will make jokes about the fact that they're attracted to pots and pans and cutlery and all of those kinds of things, they're actually missing the argument and being able to refute it in a much better way. The word pansexual comes from the prefix pan, which means all, so all sexual. This comes from the coined and credited term that Sigmund Freud did to describe people that are attracted to many different things and turned on by many different things, and how human activity, mental and physical forms of everything can play a part on the person. Now, pansexual started to be used because bisexual was too limiting, because it was the two sexes or the two genders, depending on how you wanted to look at it. But pansexual encompasses everyone, including their sex, gender identity, trans, and it really included the entire gender spectrum, which is the narrative that they've been trying to push. Now, what's really funny about the term is that pansexual originally meant bestiality, pedophilia, and necrophilia. And whenever you're looking at early adaptations of the word within the psychology movements and all of that Sigmund Freud was pushing, you'll find that these were adult sexual behaviors that were seen as bad, that we still see as bad, which then raises the question of, are the movements like the LGBT movement going to keep pushing the pedophilia narrative that we've been slowly seeing in some circles, or the bestiality narrative, or the necrophilia narrative, which is very, very creepy. And this brings up the slippery slope arguments, and while I don't believe all of them, there are parts of the LGBT communities that I'll get into that do push some of these narratives. The next part of the acronym is 2S, which is two-spirited, which is the idea that in some religions they believe that you had two spirits inside you. Now, the fact that the LGBT community is comfortable including religion whenever they bash many others is laughable to me. However, you also have to understand that they're willing to include anyone that will agree with their narrative and attack anyone that doesn't. This just shows the hypocritical mindset of many of the people within the movement. Now, the next part of the acronym is A, which stands for asexual, which is someone who does not have a sexual orientation. Now, these people basically don't have any sex drives and don't have any reason to have sex with anyone or any desire to have sex with anyone. Now, I've seen lesbian asexuals that want a partner, but they don't want the sexual interactions with people, which is becoming more and more common in some of these circles. However, I don't really have a problem with any asexual people because they're literally not fucking anyone. Now, the last part of the acronym is A for allies. These are just people that are willing to help support these communities or the movement in any way, shape, or form. In a lot of ways, I'm allies for different parts of the movement. However, I'm not a full encompassing ally because I disagree with many things, which I will get into in later videos where I talk about the trans versus true scum and transgenders and things like that that are becoming more and more a part of the movement, and the Marxist and communist ideologies that are being brought into these movements from the feminist ideologies that have been implemented into many of the LGBT rights and marches. And of course, there are other terms like gender fluid and demisexual and cisgender and pangendered and trigender and things like that that are more encompassing. But to even touch on those, you have to understand and then categorize where they fall within the basic LGBTQ acronyms so that you can really dissect the movement as a whole. You have to understand this base level before you start falling down the rabbit holes that I'm going to be taking you on in later and later episodes. So thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great and wonderful day, and I hope that you learned a little bit about the LGBTQ community and their different acronyms.